Over the next 15 years, I am committing myself to the process of self mastery and to building a 9-figure business. Regarding self mastery, I'm starting as a man who is very prone to weakness, self deception, and addiction. Regarding a business, I am starting from nothing. Welcome to Documenting the Climb, the series in which I will provide a behind the scenes look at every success, failure, and lesson learned during this pursuit. Given this is the first episode of the series, I think it'd be very useful for me to clarify my vision. Several books I've read in the self development space and people I would consider to be digital mentors have very much pushed the idea of breaking your life into very structured, focused seasons. Over the scope of a lifetime, balance is very useful. It helps create a lot of fulfillment and well being. But the idea of having set periods that are devoted to one specific thing or one small subset of things really helps create progress in those areas. So that is what I've tried to do here. The next 15 years is the season I'm entering. The only priority during these 15 years is going to be self-mastery and the creation and development of a business. I've kind of split this season mentally into two subcategories. The first is going to be 5 years in which I am focused. The primary focus is self-mastery, and the development of the business is the secondary priority. I think I am just someone who has a lot of work to do on myself before I can be a very effective entrepreneur. And it is very much worth starting there and building that foundation first, because I think it will rapidly increase the growth I experience within the business later. And then after that 5-year period, there will be a shift where the primary focus is business development, with self mastery being the secondary priority. I want to define what these things actually look like. So for self mastery, I have been someone that has been incredibly inconsistent, very weak, very prone to deceiving myself and not understanding the beliefs that are controlling my behavior, the emotions that are causing me to act in certain ways. So I am trying to shift myself on two fronts. One is behavior, the other is beliefs. When it comes to behavior, I think pretty much all behavior can be split into two categories, progressive behavior and regressive behavior. And what I mean by that is every behavior we engage in has a compounding effect that is a result of consistent input. If we do this behavior every single day, what is the long-term compounding result of doing so? And when you look at that long-term compounding result, pretty much every behavior can either have positive beneficial results or negative destructive results. So when it comes to self-mastery, from a more tangible, quantifiable standpoint, I am focusing on developing progressive behaviors that build myself up physiologically, financially, intellectually, socially, spiritually, and building or reducing and eliminating negative behaviors that create weakness, dissatisfaction, self-delusion, pain, time inefficiency, different habits that cause either more minor inefficiencies and dissatisfaction or straight up life destruction, removing those from my life. And then also developing the belief systems and the character traits and the strategies to help make me as efficient, effective, competent, energized, and clear-headed, mindful as I can be, so that every bit of work I do is as effective as it can possibly be. When it comes to business development, progress theory, this is the business that I'm focused on. For the last 5 to 10 years, I've wanted to be an entrepreneur. That has been the vision I've had for my life this entire time. And I've been incredibly indecisive and inconsistent when it came to sticking with a business and working on that business once I decided to do it. I've bounced around between a lot of different ideas. I've seen very minor success in some of them, but quickly I lacked the discipline to stick with it. The results never came because the input was never consistent, and then I switched to a new idea. I am eliminating this tendency. I'm not allowing that to continue. Progress Theory is the business I am committing myself to for the next 5 years. No matter what outcomes are achieved, I will consistently put my time into this business. Progress Theory, as it currently stands, is in its infancy. I'm making absolutely no money from it. Every single component of it is at its genesis, and I largely have no idea what I'm doing. But there are 3 components I'm trying to build up in Progress Theory. The first is the media. This is for long-term brand creation and lead generation. There's going to be several components of that. The core is going to be a podcast that I am attempting to build that is centered around more long-form, deeper content. Then also creating this growth documentation series in which I'm showcasing my process the whole time that can serve as proof of concept and proof that Progress Theory, the systems within it, work over time as I grow and develop myself. And creating and growing a YouTube channel, creating social platforms that are connected to both the podcast and more shorter form 5 to 15 minute YouTube videos. All of that may change, but ultimately it is creating a brand that is recognizable, that builds trust, builds a reputation of intentionality, transparency, honesty, and purpose, that the core values of Progress Theory are on display and people can find it in order to find the other 2 components of the business, which will be coaching and a program or a series of programs. Ultimately, I want to commit myself with this business to trying to build a system that anybody can use to create extreme growth in their life, whatever that looks like for them. I think there are 5 main categories in which everyone should strive for growth: physiology, finances, intellectual capability, social ability, and spiritual health, like well-being. And what growth looks like in each of those categories are different for each individual. The goals people have will always be different, but I think there's universal systems, principles, and processes that can apply to any human being in order for them to experience that growth. I want to build systems that people can use to do that. So long term, once the media is more built up, the program and the coaching is how I plan on actually generating revenue from the company. Now, I said I'm committed to this for 5 years. At the 5-year mark, I will assess where I'm at. How lucrative is this business? What has worked? What hasn't worked? What have I learned over the last 5 years in this attempt? And at that 5-year mark, once I really shift my focus to business development as the priority, I may pivot to a different business model entirely if that's what I feel is most advantageous at that point. But for now, I am committed to Progress Theory for the next 5 years and to trying to build this up. Given this is the very start of this series, I think it is worthwhile for me to give an overview of where I'm starting from. So to do this, I am a huge numbers guy. I think quantifying the changes we're trying to make and tracking them pretty diligently is extremely important to finding success. I tracked 4 categories over 2025: work input, finances, positive habits, and negative habits in my attempts to grow in all of these areas, and was largely ineffective, I would say. I largely failed to make the progress I was looking for in most of them. But when I look over each quarter of that year, the actual trends I see when it comes to work input is I was extremely inconsistent and I did not really make much progress at the end of the year because there was a lot of ups and downs. When I look at why that is, I was very focused on maximization of my work input. I set very high expectations. This is a tendency I've had for all my life. Set very high expectations, fail to reach them, hate myself for it, give up, retry at a future date. And so I just was not consistent. I built up no momentum with my work input. When it came to finances, those are pretty closely tied. So I had in the first quarter pretty good with finances, saved 29% of my money. The second quarter dropped significantly, only saved 5%. In the third quarter, my savings rate was negative 93%. I blew through a lot of money. And in the fourth quarter, kind of restored some progress, saved 42% of my money. On that same trend, it follows the work exactly. It was inconsistent, very little progress at the end of the year. The difference between my starting point and my end point was very slim. The progressive behavior is a category where I saw the most growth, and it is because I started with 4 habits and light versions of 4 different habits, and I focused on making it as easy as possible, making it so easy that it almost feels embarrassing that this is the point I'm starting on, proving myself I can do it by consistently completing it at 90% success rate for 3 months, and then slowly stacking habits on top. And because of that, at the end of the year, I was up to 6 different habits at 90% completion with the full hard version of them. And both numerically and just tangibly, when I look at my life, the progressive behavior is the area where I saw by far the most success. And then finally, negative habits, which I was very inconsistent with. The primary negative behavior that I was trying to overcome at the start of the year was sex addiction, porn addiction, that had escalated into compulsively visiting escorts. That caused an immense amount of destruction in my life. So that was the first regressive behavior that I thought, if I can eliminate this is causing the most destruction. The ROI from eliminating this behavior is the highest. So focus on one thing at a time. Eliminate that. And first quarter was very good. Second quarter, I had a bit of a mental breakdown that was aligned with some difficult life circumstances, and it really caused me to crash significantly. My numbers skyrocketed, and it was closely attached to a drop in numbers in all categories. Third quarter started to get it together some, but was still pretty extreme. Fourth quarter was the best quarter I had. It was still up, down throughout the year, but I saw more legitimate growth in this area than I would say I did in work input or finances, but it was still very inconsistent, very slow. And then when I look at the year as a whole, I kind of failed to reach my goal in every category, because while I was finishing the year with a lot of momentum and I felt good about where I was at the end of the year, I was inconsistent throughout the entire year. So my actual numbers and the compounding effect of all the behavior I was engaging in was limiting my growth to a significant degree. So that brings me to where I am today. My strategy for 2026 when it comes to my self-development is entirely focused on slow, gradual, consistent progression. Something that has become glaringly obvious to me when I look at my 2025 data and when I look at my life as a whole is that consistency trumps intensity every single time. The person who is able to maintain far less input on a consistent basis over the long haul is going to make significantly more progress. And the real game is slowly increasing the amount of intensity that you're able to hold consistently over a prolonged period of time. And so with my work input, finances, progressive behavior, and negative behavior, I am focused entirely on starting slow, building momentum through actually hitting my small, easy goal, and doing slow, gradual increases in the goal as I hit them so that the behavior can actually compound over time. I saw by far the most success with my progressive behavior in 2026. And when I tried to look at why that worked, it was because that was my approach. I started so small, it was incredibly easy. And by the end of the year, I'd lost 60 pounds. I was stronger than I'd been in years. I felt better than I'd been in years. And I built a lot of confidence in my ability to follow through on what I said I was going to do. And the compounding effect happens a lot faster than it feels like it's going to. And so I'm just going to copy and paste that strategy across every category in hopes that by the end of the year, the amount of intensity I'm able to hold is far more impressive and creates a lot better output. When it comes to business development, the core problem that I described with my approach to business as a whole for most of my life has been that I am incredibly inconsistent with my work inputs. I struggle a lot with self-discipline, especially in a role where there's no sort of external accountability and there's no one watching me or waiting on my results. And so it's entirely up to me to do the work and to motivate myself to do the work. And so again, very much focused on starting small. With my progress theory work, I was so inconsistent over 2025. My actual work input at the end of the year was like a quarter of what I wanted it to be. And so I'm starting off at 10 hours per week, actually 9 hours per week is the amount of input that I am expecting myself to hold. Every month I do that with 90% success. I will bump it up by 10% with the goal of hitting 20 hours a week on progress theory by the end of the year. And at a certain point, that 20 hours a week and whatever dollar per hour I'm able to generate from that, I'll reduce my hours at my job, increase the hours again with the same positive feedback loop, and over the course of 1 to 3 years, hopefully move into progress theory full time. So I want to show off the basic progression system that I am working with today, which is a tracking tool. It's like a improved version of the tracking tool that I showcased for my 2025 data. My first block was built, which I'm tracking things in a 4-week period instead of a month now. I think it's easier for numbers, with the plan being the basic structure of how I work is 12 weeks on, 1 week of recovery. So like 12-week blitzes split into 3 4-week sections. And my first block with the goals that I described, built around the idea of starting small and gradually increasing. This was the best month of my life I have ever experienced. When it came to hitting my goals, I hit them in quite literally every category. I believe there might have been one, my assets, I was a little low on. But I tried to extend the amount of things that I'm actually tracking. So with work input, I'm breaking my hours down a lot more specifically. With finances, I'm tracking my personal and business and my overall net worth and assets. With the positive habits, tracking them and splitting them into different categories, with the starting emphasis being on physiology. I want to get my physical, mental, and emotional health in order because I think that is foundational. That will improve my performance in every single category throughout my life. I think it's definitely the first thing worth focusing on. And with my negative habits, there's 3 different things: actively reframing my most recurrent negative thought patterns, avoiding procrastination, and overcoming the urge to watch porn or visit an escort. Saw a lot of success in every category. Surpassed my goals with work input, surpassed my goals with finances, blew past my goals with the positive habits and had no porn engaged with. Procrastination, I still procrastinate a lot, but I actually hit my goal, which I hadn't even been trying to the months before. And the active reframes surpassed my goal by far. And one of the core changes is I built a scoring system for this, where every number has a base value that it's assigned to, with the goal of being able to measure the trend line so that I have a score that shows, like, overall, did I progress this month or regress in my behavior? There's base values, multipliers, and a score, so at the end of the month, I get an exact breakdown of where I landed. The hope with this is that it gamifies progress. Video games are extremely addicting because of the progression systems and the reward systems. And this makes it all feel like a game. It makes the behavior more rewarding because I can see a tangible, quantifiable representation of how beneficial it is in my life, and I want to compete against myself and beat myself on a week-to-week and month-to-month basis. And when it comes to keeping that analogy of the video game in life, the behaviors, most of them are intrinsically rewarding, and that they change my life. They change the experience of my day-to-day life and make it far better over time as I keep engaging in the behavior. So there is both a score that I am chasing, I'm trying to beat, and there are rewards for doing so. For now, that is the goal with this year. When it comes to the business specifically, I'm not focused on revenue. I'm trying to remove outcomes from my mind, remove revenue as a primary focus. I am focused on building up a progress theory media and testing my ideas on myself, proving the concepts to myself, and slowly taking on free one-on-one clients in order to test the ideas and the theories on them, see what actually works, see what doesn't, and build the foundation for the program and the coaching later on. So this has been episode 1 of Documenting the Climb. Over time, I am absolutely planning on making these videos more engaging, including more clips of my actual life outside of just standing talking in this corner. But this episode is a little different because it's kind of setting the expectation. It is the foundation for this series that, if everything goes as planned, will likely be about 240 videos over the course of 15 years. So it is a long-term project, and I'm hoping what these videos look like in a year and what they look like in 5 years and 10 years is vastly different as I get closer and closer to the long-term goals of building a holistic system for self-mastery and building a 9-figure company. But for now, this is the beginning. So if you are watching this right now, I appreciate you. I hope you check back in as I learn and grow. And if you're watching this in the future and you're just trying to see where it all began, I hope I am a lot further than I was then. See you next time.